Alright, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I've changed my shirt. Last week I was in a beautiful shade of lilac. People made fun of me. I had a little cry when I got home. It was really had to make me rethink my wardrobe last week, I tell you. So, as you're coming in, I invite you just to make a note of the number that you might want to text. Thank you. Big hugs. Don't just text it. Come on down. Just tease me. Okay. So it seems that a good number of you have got hold of that number to text and got the basic idea, which is great. So please keep them reasonably polite. Obviously it's a risk, and obviously we have the numbers as well, and we'll track you down. So make sure you have the textable number if you want to ask a question. Just make a note of it now. I'm sure during this talk there'll be reference to the event last night. I hope some of you... Oh, careful. Happy birthday, Caroline. Kathleen. This is great. All right, we could be here all day. I'll be like a text show. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna close down the text wall in a moment. In fact, I'm going to do that now because you've all had a good chance to get that out of your system and just check you have the number, which is great. And so it gives me enormous pleasure to this afternoon to introduce you to the second keynote from this year's series. This keynote is delivered by Jane Davis. She's the director of the Reader organisation, an organisation that by now I hope you've got some impression of. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow in the academic lecture, where we're going to talk about what the Reader does and what you can do directly to be involved in the Reader organisation. The Reader organisation is something that Liverpool Hope University has got more and more involved with over the last 2 years, and I'm sure Jane will say a little bit about that. So without further ado, we'll stop. I should say there's a bit more ado. We'll stop periodically for questions. So as you have a question, send it to the text wall, and every now and again we will have a look and see if we can answer some. We probably won't answer them all, but we'll have a go. All right, so no more ado. It's my pleasure then to hand over to Dr. Jane Davis.
Thanks, Dave. A very small round of applause for Dave. Who was at the Danny Boyle do last night? Good show of hands. Any of you? 5 of you? 6 of you? 7 of you? Well, I did have a lecture yesterday, but I couldn't really sleep last night for thinking over some of the implications of what Danny and Frank had to say yesterday. And so I've got a set of slides, but I might not be able to talk about them very well. And not only that, I want to switch from my slides to something else, and I want to start with this. Okay.
We're spiritual beings. Inside us, we have an energy that's invincible. In our mind, we have morals and principles, incredibly strong emotions. To some, they seem invisible. Some of us stand so strong with wide smiles, but inside, we are miserable. Some of us have a spiritual significance beyond human understanding that defines mystical. Some of us stand back and watch the leaders of our planet rob lower developed countries for their minerals. Me, I decide to stand up for what's right and get lyrical. For years, people have voted conservative or liberal. For years, these same people that vote are still miserable. The television is shit. I said the television is shit, whether analog or digital. It's destroyed families' communication because now their parents speak to their kids at a minimum. If you're listening to me now, don't think what I'm saying is dismissible. If you dismiss what I'm saying, enjoy your life of ignorance. Inflated egos shine through the sheeple's militants. Ancient civilizations still stand firm like Bosnian pyramids. Never-enders like EastEnders just encourage people to be as thick as shit. Meanwhile, folks live in tower blocks for 20 years but they don't know their neighbours. They don't share knowledge or love. They'd rather act like strangers. And according to the propaganda in the paper, every teenager with a hood might decide to plagiar. The media puts everyone in categories. This affects social behaviour. Glamorising meaningless logos keeps the kids in India busy with slave labour, and it seems like everybody's obsessed with a promise to pay on paper. I still meditate under a full moon like, why can't everyone be obsessed with nature? We're all here on a spiritual journey of enlightenment. You'll find out sooner or later. With every step on this journey I walk, I seem to get more persistent and braver, more passionate and determined. Now I'm striving for greater. And I can't even describe the energy inside me that drives my belly, man, stone body. All I know is I'm going to make a huge difference in this world, and nothing's going to stop me. My nan told me, if a job's worth doing, then it's worth doing properly. Call me a dreamer, but hey, that's better than every day just chasing a lottery. Voila.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's SGB, SBG. Do you know him? Anybody know him already? No? Okay. Can we make that go large now, please? That will be the last thing. That's it, thanks. No texting. Sunny boy, using lyric as a way of keeping his head together. He's got quite a lot of videos on YouTube if you want to have a look at them. Some nice thoughts. Happy birthday to the Queen is a good one, I'd recommend. And he's using it, I'd say, as a survival tool. And that's what I want to talk about. I'm not supposed to wander away from the microphone. That's what I want to talk about. And I'm going to tell you that the quotation, reading as if for life, comes from Charles Dickens and from David Copperfield, where the young David is the victim of a vicious stepfather who is what we would call these days abusing him, bullying him, locking him up. And he's locked up in this room on his own, and the only thing he's got is stories. So this is a little bit from chapter 4. My father, who's dead now, my father had left a small collection of books in a little room upstairs to which I had access, for it had joined my own, and which nobody else in our house ever troubled. From that blessed little room, Roderick Random, these are characters from children's Victorian reading matter, Roderick Random, Peregrine Pickle, Humphrey Clinker, Tom Jones, the Vicar of Wakefield, Don Quixote, Gil Blas and Robinson Crusoe came out, a glorious host to keep me company. They kept alive my fancy and my hope of something beyond that place and time. They and the Arabian Nights and the tales of the genie. This was my only and my constant comfort. When I think of it, the picture always rises in my mind of a summer evening, the boys at play in the churchyard, and I sitting on my bed, reading, as if for life. I wanted to start with Sonny Boy Green because I don't want you to think that that kind of thing only goes on in the 19th century. You know, he may only be one boy in London, but he's doing it now. So look him up. You can follow him on Twitter at that number. Oh, look, that's me. I just thought you'd like to see that I haven't changed much. Right? I'm still the same person. Still got bad hair. It's never going to get any better. But that little kid, aged 9, is just about to enter a maelstrom of family breakdown. And so there I am having a day out at Chester Zoo. Then the next day my parents get divorced, and then quite soon after that my mum becomes an alcoholic. And I become the person who does the shopping and the cooking and the washing in our family, and takes mum to hospital when things get really bad. You know, not much older than that. And that's the back of our house getting demolished at the back of Upper Parliament Street. You can see the cathedral in the background. People who know Liverpool will recognise the cathedral, if not the Somali Club in the foreground. And if I tell you that, lucky for me, age 13, I was in the Somali dancing. But in my head, as well as life in the Somali Club, was Heidi. I don't know if any of you have ever read it. Anybody? No. Oh well. Oh hooray! There's a hand at the back. It lies in front of you like a land of dreams. Get out the library. It's a really good little story of how a kid copes with quite a difficult life and finds someone who loves her and who makes it okay. And I really loved that book because I had a granddad, and he helped to look after me. And sometimes when I ran away from home, that's where I would run to. He lived over in Neston on the Wirral. So for me, there was a big identification with that book. And I was also lucky in that I owned this lot, which is the 1960s version of Google. As you can see, if you want to know about flags of the world, it was in Arthur Mee's Children's Encyclopedia. And as for the procession of the worlds, you know, I don't think even Google could match that illustration. How to make a lavender bottle, I don't know, Google it, let's see. Can Google teach us that? So I had all that. There were 10 volumes of that. I wore them out. And all of those things fed into me to make me a reader. So these are books I can remember reading by about the age of 15 or 16. I tried to get old pictures of them so that you can see what they were. And some of them were science fiction, and some of them were serious literary novels. There's hardly any children's books there. But the one that was best for me was Happy Days, a play by Samuel Beckett, which I got into because I was into drama, and the Everyman Theatre had a production of Waiting for Godot, which I saw and made me think, wow, fantastic, find out more about this, read Happy Days. Would like to be happy. It's about a really sad lady who's not at all happy, but actually that was brilliant for me, because that was my real situation. So I would say a lot of what got me to be a very resilient person in a not great start in life was to be found within the covers of books. Literature helped me be a survivor. I'm going to read you this poem now, but before I do, let me just go back so you only have to look at the pictures. Before I do, I want to tell you about a time when I was teaching at the University of Liverpool, taught literature there for 15 years, and had an evening class where grown-up, adult, free people paid money to come along and read literature. And we had a Christmas party, and I said, bring cakes or a bottle of wine and bring a poem you really love. And this lady, who looked like a pretty together school headmistress, was in fact a senior administrator in the university, brought this poem. It's by John Clare. He's a 18th, possibly 19th century poet. He was mad. He spent a lot of his time in an asylum, and this poem was written in an asylum. And if you don't know what a 19th century lunatic asylum was like, it was like chains and straw. So, I am. Yet what I am, none cares or knows. My friends forsake me like a memory lost. I am the self-consumer of my woes. They rise and vanish in oblivion's oblivious host, like shades in love and death's oblivion lost. And yet I am, and live with shadows tossed into the nothingness of scorn and noise, into the living sea of waking dreams, where there is neither sense of life nor joys, but the vast shipwreck of my life's esteems. And even the dearest, that I love the best, are strange, nay, rather stranger than the rest. I long for scenes where man has never trod, a place where woman never smiled or wept, there to abide with my Creator, God, and sleep as I in childhood sweetly slept, untroubling and untroubled where I lie, the grass below, above the vaulted sky. So this rather together-looking middle-aged lady read this poem out in the middle of our Christmas party, and somebody said afterwards, that's a bit painful, isn't it? Why do you like that one so much? And she said, I used to be a street alcoholic in Melbourne, Australia. I mean, I was a married woman on a farm with kids, but alcoholism cost me my family, my farm, my husband, and everything, and I lived on the streets. And all the time I lived on the streets, I had this poem on a piece of paper, folded up, and I kept it with me. Now, probably none of you, I would imagine none of you have lived on the streets, but if you had, you would know that keeping possessions when you live on the streets is quite difficult. You know, you're always on the move, and your bin bag gets left behind. So keeping a piece of paper with a poem was quite an achievement. And why this poem? It had been in a school textbook when she was a kid, teenager. She'd loved it, and she'd kept a copy of it. But why did she keep it all that time when she was kicking around the streets of Melbourne? I am. Yet what I am, none cares or knows. My friends forsake me like a memory lost. She kept it because it said something to her about who she was, what she was in, and what might happen. Untroubling and untroubled. What a troubling presence a mad alcoholic mother living on the streets must be. How she would long not to be that mother. How the poem gives her that possibility. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about survival, because there she was in this literature class with a hairdo and smarter clothes than I'm wearing today as a senior university administrator. What had happened in between Melbourne days and that, God only knows. But something had, and that poem was part of the story. Oops. Perhaps it's time for question, Dave, if you've got any. Have you?
But it's more of a statement.
Meanwhile, you could be considering that picture. It's more of a statement. Yes, well, brother, sister, welcome to the Brotherhood of the Arthur Mee Children's Encyclopedia Club. Yeah. Okay, and if you... okay, well, go back to the tiger. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so... I wonder what you think the difference between those two creatures is, apart from the fact that one of them is quite well drawn and the other one is sketchy. And the one, I'm not very good on right and left, but the one on the far side over there, really I don't think that person should be smiling so much, because one of the big differences between a tiger and a human being obviously is teeth, claws and so on, and you really shouldn't be smiling that much when you're quite near that guy. But what else? Tigers don't shop. They don't go to Liverpool One on a Saturday. That's a difference. Tigers don't have the language of music or mathematics. That's a difference. Tigers don't have the thing that might have made that lady become an alcoholic and helped her stop being one. They don't have what you might call, what Sonny Boy Green calls the spiritual, the inner bit. Well, they might have it, but we don't know. We don't know what animals feel like, but we do know what humans feel like because we write it down. We know that humans, all of us, have a consciousness of an inner life. And I think that complex language, which evolved 100,000 years ago, they think, evolved partly in conjunction with that inner life. Like, you need to speak because you've got things in there that aren't just animal, I want to eat. They are other things. For example, the burial of the dead. Animals don't bury their dead or make monuments to their dead. Once you're dead, if you're a tiger, you're dead. But humans make things like this. This is a Calder stone. It's down the road in Calderstones Park. Yes, yeah, it is. Scousers in the audience will be amazed. Have you ever seen them? You've seen them. There are 6 of them mouldering in a greenhouse. You can't actually get in anymore to see them. But that's a lovely photograph of one, and you see it's got markings on. It's probably from a burial chamber. The markings are significant. They mean something. We don't know what it is. But our ancestors made that to pass on some kind of inner information. Written language, as opposed to spoken language, was only invented about 4,000 years ago. So in human terms, it's very, very new. It began with lists of things, lists of corn, wine, like for trading. It was an economic tool. But very soon, as soon as that had been invented, people began to use it to write down poetry. And so we've got the Epic of Gilgamesh, which I hope I've got you a bit of, yes, which is the first bit of poetry in the world that's written. I will teach about him who experienced all things. Anna granted him the totality of knowledge of all. He saw the secret, discovered the hidden. He brought information of the time before the flood. He went on a distant journey, pushing himself to exhaustion, but then was brought to peace. Find the copper tablet box. Open the lock of bronze. Undo the fastening of its secret opening. Take out and read the lapis lazuli tablet. How Gilgamesh went through every hardship. It's a biography. It's the story of a man's life. But it's a man contending with the massive forces of the universe that make us feel great or terrible. Not just tigers, but our own feelings. Oh, this one is a bit hard, and I don't know if you've got any others.
We have got,
I'll have one then.
let me just... Hopefully that's now right. I had to delete one quickly.
What is your poem of choice?
Oh, God.
It's one I would like to ask all of you, and if you go to the garden room and look at the collection of books Charlotte has put there and pick out some books of poems, I will be asking you all over the coming year, you know, send poems to Charlotte, tell her good things, let's share them, get them on the Hope Readers blog and so on. What is my poem of choice? Well, last night Frank and Danny talked about Paradise Lost. That's a good one. It's just a bit big to carry around with you at 12,000 lines or whatever it is. I like a poem called And Yet the Books by Czeslaw Milosz. I believe you might pronounce him like that, I don't know. And I might be able to recite that for you at the end of the session. Thank you.
Mine is
Oh, well, and a lot of people would share dulce et decorum est. A lot of people remember that very fondly from life at school.
we go back. And
Yeah, thank you. Let's go on. So this is a hard one, so I ask you to try and take it in. It's from a psychologist called Wilfred Bion, who's interested in how human minds work, and particularly how we work as social creatures. If a person cannot think with his thoughts, that's to say, if a person has thoughts but lacks the apparatus of thinking, which enables him to use his thoughts, to think them as it were, then the personality is incapable of learning from experience. This failure is serious. Failure to eat, drink or breathe properly has disastrous consequences for life itself. Failure to use emotional experience produces a comparable disaster in the development of the personality. You might want to come back to that, I don't know, make a note of it, do what Danny Boyle did, have it in your notebook and come back years hence. It's one I want to think about quite a lot, because we are emotional creatures, we are spiritual beings, and what you do if you don't have a language for that, I think, welcome to Liverpool. I should have started with this one. Welcome to Liverpool, or any city in the UK, or possibly any city in Europe, certainly any major city in the United States. What do we do with feelings when we don't have a language to express them? What happens to our feelings when we don't have an emotional language? What kind of people do we become? How like tigers might we be if we weren't in touch with our own feelings? It's not just Sonny Boy Green who thinks that we are spiritual beings. I don't know how you really pronounce Teilhard de Chardin. He's a philosopher and a thinker about God. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. If that unspeakable, private inner life that we've all got is going on, and we've got no way of talking about it, as Danny and Frank would have said last night, the best part of ourselves are not present. So for me, reading is a way of putting language to some of the things I can't say about it. It doesn't have to be just reading, which is why I wanted to start and bring it to a close again with Sonny Boy, because it doesn't have to all be Dickens. And could we get the YouTube up again just so people can get a second go of him? Thank you, Dave.
so same one.
Same one. Whoa, but it's so many of them.
Is that the same one?
Yeah, it might be.
We're spiritual beings. Inside us, we have an energy that's invincible. In our mind, we have morals and principles, incredibly strong emotions. To some, they seem invisible. Some of us stand so strong with wide smiles, but inside, we are miserable. Some of us have a spiritual significance beyond human understanding that defines mystical. Some of us stand back and watch the leaders of our planet rob lower developed countries for their minerals. Me, I decide to stand up for what's right and get lyrical. For years, people have voted conservative or liberal. For years, these same people that vote are still miserable. The television is shit. I said the television is shit, whether analog or digital. It's destroyed families' communication because now their parents speak to their kids at a minimum. If you're listening to me now, Don't think what I'm saying is dismissible. If you dismiss what I'm saying, enjoy your life of ignorance. Inflated egos shine through the sheeples, militants. Ancient civilizations still stand firm like Bosnian pyramids. Never-enders like EastEnders just encourage people to be as thick as shit. Meanwhile, folks live in tower blocks for 20 years but they don't know their neighbours. They don't share knowledge or love. They'd rather act like strangers. And according to the propaganda in the paper, every teenager with a hood might decide to plagiar. The media puts everyone in categories. This affects social behaviour. Glamorizing meaningless logos keeps the kids in India busy with slave labour, and it seems like everybody's obsessed with a promise to pay on paper. I still meditate under a full moon like, why can't everyone be obsessed with nature? We're all here on a spiritual journey of enlightenment. You'll find out sooner or later. With every step on this journey I walk, I seem to get more persistent and braver, more passionate and determined. Now I'm striving for greater. And I can't even describe the energy inside me that drives my belly, 9-stone body. All I know is I'm going to make a huge difference in this world, and nothing's going to stop me. My nan told me, if a job's worth doing, then it's worth doing properly. Call me a dreamer, but hey, that's better than every day just chasing the lottery. One love.
So what's your favourite poem? Well, that is one of my favourite poems at the moment. And I particularly, as someone's gran, love the moment when he says, "My nan told me." So, what do you think is the most spiritual feeling? Love? Is that a real question? Could someone else answer it? That's too hard for me. I don't know, is the answer. I don't know. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, though, such as, is it spiritual? What is that is inside you that I'm trying to talk about? What would you call it? Anybody? You could text in. Text the answers in. It's your inner life. Is it? Does anybody feel they have a book or a story or a poem that has touched that place in the inner life? Sorry for all the hard questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. JC. Well, I suppose they could be being sent. I'd like something back. Come on. Has anybody been touched by a thing or? Okay. I think I better just go now, then. I don't think I can go over that one.
All right. I'm not sure if I should lighten the mood anymore, but I think it's very, very helpful to have the text wall, but it's also great, and really we want to encourage you to feel free to raise your hand. And last year we did have people asking questions, and it was really fantastic. Do not want to have the text wall discouraging you from that. So I can see a few people either they're looking at Google or they're actually going to text, I don't know. So please feel free to add a comment or a text, or just put up your hand. Have something to say. That would be exciting too. In the meantime, I'll tell you my favourite poem. Can I do that?
Yes, thank you.
It's all about me. Ready? So I got married a couple of years ago. Sorry about that. And my best friend, who writes poems, he wrote a poem for the wedding, and I'm not sure I remember it all. I'll have to start it and see where we go. He recited it for us, and it makes me cry. So if I cry during it, you'll know why. This is serious, so if I could have total silence, please. That's probably my wife. I'm going to leave that off for a moment so you can all listen and focus. I'll probably only remember the first 2 lines. Here we go. This is a wedding, by the way. It's about a wedding. When two are struck by Cupid's gold-tipped dart, the very sun within them seems to shine. See, I knew I'd only remember the first 2 lines. When blood becomes from fingertip to heart. I'm going to have to look it up. I'll Google it. It's on Google. I'll bring it next time. I can't believe I forget it. Dwayne will be absolutely furious with me. I thought I remembered it. It's like sometimes you can remember 3 lines, and if you get to the 4th, it flows, but it's not flying. I think it's the nerves, to be honest. Thank you. So are there any other serious questions or thoughts? Let's have a look. Thank you. Jane, do you have a Twitter? So I don't think if there are any more comments or serious questions that we might address. I don't know if you want to say any more, Jane.
This is one of my favourite poems. It's called And Yet the Books, so Cheslow Miller. And yet the books will be there on the shelves, separate beings that appeared once, still wet as shining chestnuts under a tree in autumn, and touched, cuddled, began to live. Yeah.
It's too tempting, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I can't. Thank you. And touched, cuddled, began to live. In spite of fires on the horizon, castles blown up, tribes on the march, planets in motion. We are, they said, even as their pages were being torn out or a buzzing flame licked away their letters. So much more durable than we are, whose frail warmth cools down with memory, disperses, perishes. I imagine the earth when I am no more. Nothing happens. It's still a strange pageant. Dewy lilacs, women's dresses, a song in the valley. And yet the books will be there, on the shelves. Well born, derived from humans, but also from radiance, heights. I might have got that a bit wrong, but I think that was it. Derived from people, but also from radiance, heights. So, what goes into books, people's thoughts and feelings, is there for us to get out and use, which is why for the last 10 years my work has been about getting books out of universities, off courses, away from syllabi, and into the hands of people like that woman in Melbourne who need them. So Friday mornings I work in a drug and alcohol rehab. I read poetry, novels, short stories with people like her who are trying to come away from alcoholism, heroin addiction, crack. Can books help? Ask those people. They'll tell you, yeah. That's probably all I want to say, I think. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think it's so important to reinforce as you embark on your university studies that this culture of university, and you have to ask this for yourselves, might be destroying reading as much as it's liberating reading. The culture of higher education and of schooling might be destroying our relationship to language, our relationship to thinking. Now, of course, can you just hang on 2 seconds? Of course, we as people interested in education have a responsibility to think about the role that we have beyond just teaching in schools, but the role we have in higher education and our responsibility to language. And I think that is really important in the context of this talk. I hope you see the bigger picture, that this is about ultimately liberation of the human spirit, which is a big point. But we're going to try and draw out those connections as we go through the course. Great. Thank you very much for listening. See you next time.